Good morning and welcome to Making Sense of It. I am Mona Duncan, your moderator, and this program is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory. Each week we have someone come on and give us how they use some of the concepts of Dr. William Glasser and the effects of them, and you can take them and adopt them into your life also. Our speaker today is Mike Fulkerson, and he is going to be talking about choice theory case conceptualization. So welcome everyone. And after Mike talks, you will have the time to ask him some questions once we close out the airwaves. And Mike, you ready?
Yes.
Well, welcome. It's good to see you, and thank you for participating.
Thank you, Mona, for the introduction. And I'll just go ahead and kind of get underway. Gonna see. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about case conceptualization and what that is. Case conceptualization is looking at a person that we're working with through a theoretical lens. And with choice theory, we've got a really great tool for doing that. I work in a community mental health setting, and one of my roles is doing a lot of clinical supervision and helping people with developing treatment plans. And it's very difficult to do treatment planning if you do not have solid knowledge in theory and are able to conceptualize a case through a theoretical lens. So what I'm going to do is I'll go through like an outline I put together. Another word for case conceptualization is an interpretive summary. And that's what they're called really at our agency. But it's really, you could say those words are really synonymous: case conceptualization and interpretive summary. So we have a general outline when we do an interpretive summary. And what I've done is added some questions that clinicians can use that will help them conceptualize a case. Because when I review a lot of our medical records charts and look at the interpretive summaries, I find a lot of them blank or have very little information in it. I believe that just shows just maybe the lack of just knowledge and skill in terms of conceptualizing a case. Those are two things I felt like in my graduate training were kind of neglected. It was the ability to or training people to write treatment plans and case conceptualizations. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share here, and okay, can you see my screen now?
No, I think you need to share one more time.
Your screen sharing. Okay.
We're seeing your screen, but it hasn't brought up there yet. It's starting to now.
Okay. Probably see.
Okay, now we can see your laptop.
Okay, that's good. Great. All right.
There you go.
So here's it. So I can make this a little bigger if needed. So can everyone read what I've written here?
We can. Why don't you make it just a few grains, a little bigger, larger? That's good. That's good.
Oh, all right. Okay. So one of the first parts of a interpretive summary is the central theme of the person involved. And so what I've listed some bullet points here that clinicians can use to help identify what would be in this category of the case conceptualization or interpretive summary. First, identifying organized total behaviors. This would include acting, thinking, feeling, and physiological symptoms. Oftentimes, the diagnosis is going to give us clues as to what part of the total behavior is going to be most recognizable. So if we have a person we're working with that has a disruptive behavior disorder, the most recognizable component of the total behavior is going to be the acting component. If it's a thought disorder, or we're dealing with a client that has psychosis, it's going to be most recognizable in the thinking component. If we're dealing with a person that has an affective disorder or a mood disorder, it's going to be most recognizable in the feeling component. And then we may have some people that are referred to us where the doctors have not been able to determine that there's anything organically wrong with a person. So they may tell them, well, it's all in your head, and refer them to someone for counseling, and they're likely to be diagnosed with a somatoform disorder, because the most recognizable symptoms are the physiological symptoms. I think a lot of us can remember the classic video, Dr. Glasser working with Edna, and she was an excellent example of a person needing help whose primary symptoms were in the physiological category. Another question we can ask ourselves is, what message does the client appear to be sending to the outside world? That can be one of the recurring themes that you can see. Some examples of messages a client may appear to be sending or communicating through their behavior could be, no one's going to tell me what to do. That would be a typical message you might see of a person who has an oppositional defiant disorder diagnoses, or just leave me alone, or if someone else would change, my life would be better. Or one that I've heard a lot about in supervision this week is some young children who seem to be sending the message to their parents, I want what I want when I want it, and by golly, if I don't get it, it's cause for warfare. Call it the National Guard, CIA. And we have a lot of parents that are giving into that, and so the children are in their mind, their behavior's working, so why would they stop? And the parents are like, well, what we do, because now we got a little Vladimir Putin in our household. So other messages could be, I'm going to keep, I know what I'm doing is not working, but I'm keep doing it anyway. Or another possible message would be the person who seems to send the message that I'm an eternal victim, and they may have been at one point, but now it's become such an organized behavior that it's like even situations where there is not anything coercive or abusive happening, they are responding as if there is. What appears to be the purpose of the client's behavior. So in other words, what quality world pictures and needs are tied to the total behaviors. So one way to gather this information is to ask the person, what did you expect to happen when you made this decision? Or what did you want to happen? What did you hope would happen? And this can be a much more effective question to ask than rather, why did you do this? Because that's more likely to promote or encourage excuse making. But to simply ask, what were you hoping would happen? What did you expect would happen when you made this decision? A second category that's part of the case conceptualization or interpretive summary is the history of mental health, addiction, trauma symptoms, including information about the family. So we can simply ask ourselves, what has been tried thus far to help the person we're serving. Have outpatient services been tried? Case management, has hospitalization been made? Has foster care services been in place? What has been tried thus far? What has been helpful for the client? And what has not been helpful for the client? And so these can be some information that we'd want to get from the person we're working with, as well as their guardian or other family members who may be involved in our services. And then here's a self-evaluation question. Is the client satisfied with his or her progress with the services thus far? Number 3, the perception of the person's service needs, strengths, limitations, and problems. How does the client see him or herself? How does the client perceive the problem? What is the client's perceived level of need fulfillment? And does the client have an external or internal locus of control or locus of evaluation? So the locus of control is, where do they see their place of control? Do they see the control on the outside or on the inside? And then the locus of evaluation is, whose opinion seems to be most important to them? Do they have more of a internal locus evaluation, where it's kind of what they think is most important, or are they more concerned with what other people think and have more of an external locus of evaluation? Does the client see him or herself as part of the problem or part of the solution? And then the clinical impression regarding both positive and negative factors likely to affect the person's course of treatment and clinical outcomes after discharge. So using the basic needs of choice theory, describe what is most important to the client, as well as what is most important for the client. So in person-centered recovery planning, what is important to the client, if you were to translate that into choice theory terms, it's going to be more of what's related to quality world pictures associated with fun, freedom, love and belonging, and power. What is important for the client is going to be quality world pictures related more to survival, self-preservation. So that's one way of kind of thinking of it. So an example of something that would be important to a client might be like hobbies and things that they would like to do. Whereas something that's important for a client would be that they're getting adequate sleep, or that they're taking their blood pressure medication as prescribed. That would be an example of something that's important for the client. And sometimes those things can come into conflict with one another. Those quality world pictures can come into conflict. And so part of the skill is doing the case conceptualization and the treatment planning is being able to balance what is important to the client and what is important for the client. What impact could cultural factors have on treatment? So things such as gender or sexual identity. These things can certainly have an impact on treatment. Identify barriers which may impede the client's ability to fulfill needs and develop need-satisfying relationships. So with person-centered recovery planning, identifying the barriers is very important, because for each barrier, there's supposed to be an objective on the treatment plan. Identify the client's current stage of change or level of commitment to change. Prochaska and DiClemente have put together, there's like 5 stages of change, and they sound in many ways very similar to Bob Wobling's levels of commitment to change, but they're a little different. There's the pre-contemplative stage of change, where the client is like, I don't want to be here, you can't help me, and is oftentimes referred by the courts or someone else, a third person has referred them. There's the contemplative stage of change, where the clients recognize there's a problem, but they're not sure if they have the skills or if it's possible that change can happen. And then there is the preparation stage of change, where they recognize what they're doing is not working and they're ready to do something different, which is followed by a 4th stage, which is the action stage, where now they start making the changes. And then the 5th stage is maintenance, where they're now creating more organized behaviors. But that's important to have in the case conceptualization, is what stage of change does the client appear to be in, because that's going to determine a lot of treatment effectiveness. I was reading recently about cognitive behavioral therapy, that it is most effective with clients that are in at least the preparation stage of change. And I find that very true with a lot of different therapies. 2 therapies that I have found quite effective in the earlier stages of change, that being the pre-contemplative stage of change and the contemplative stage of change, is motivational interviewing and reality therapy. And why is that? Because I believe they focus so much on the relationships and the self-evaluation. And so to advantage of those approaches is that it's been my experience that you can have a lot more success when you have clients in those earlier stages of change, because again, the emphasis on the relationships. Number 5, the recommended treatment, including any special assessment or referral, as well as routine procedures. What services would help this client? So it could be, do they need case management? Do they need community support services or peer support services, individual therapy, group therapy? How do you see yourself or other services assisting this client? And then what methods or techniques of reality therapy could be helpful to this client? As I mentioned before, using the connecting relationship habits throughout the therapy, but especially in working with clients that are in those early stages of change, using the WDEP, or the process of reality therapy, the psychoeducation, physical exercise, relaxation techniques, meditation, paradoxical techniques, role play, and using metaphors, and also confrontation, which a lot of that in reality therapy is done indirectly through the self-evaluation questions. So these are just some things that I've been using in my supervision and in training to help people develop the case conceptualizations and the or interpretive summaries, because it was something I was finding a lot of clinicians were sometimes just leaving these almost, if not blank, almost blank. It was because I think they were not sure what to write. And so I've now finish my little talk, and I want to turn it over to Mona and the rest of you to see if there are any questions.
Okay, thanks, Mike. That was very informative. I can tell that you put a lot of work into it. And as I was saying that, when you were talking about, it's kind of like you have a target there. And as more information you can get that fits within that target, the more the client is understood.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
And when you,
really trying to get into what's their quality world and look at them through that choice theory lens.
right. So whenever you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, there you go, so we can see you when you talk to us. On the locus of control, you talked about outside locus or an inside locus. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Okay, so many times when people come to us for help, it seems about 95% of the time if it's a relationship issue, which usually it is, that they're looking for someone else to change. They see the control as outside themselves. I want my spouse to change. I want my parents to change. I want my boss to change. And I mean, it's true. If those other people would change, their lives probably would be better. So they have there's that external locus of control. So our goal in reality therapy is generally to help people have a more internal locus of control, but kind of seeing where the place of control is at times.
Whenever my husband's mom was getting to the point where she was needing to have some more help than we could give her, and her 4 children and myself were able to go in and talk with the counselor that was talking with her, and the counselor would ask her questions, but she would specifically look to my husband or her daughter, or for the answers. And I really loved the way that counselor worked with her. He would say, "Now, Ruby, I want to know what you think. Don't look to Garland to see what he wants you to do. What is it you want to do?" So is that what you're talking about, to help the person see where their locus of control is?
Well, that sounds a little bit more like the locus of evaluation.
Oh,
That's how
okay.
those kind of differ. The locus of evaluation is does the client view their own point of view or the outside world as being more important? Are they more concerned with what they think or what other people think? And so a person with an external locus of evaluation is overly concerned with what other people think. Yeah, and it sounds like the case. You ask them a question, they're going to look to everybody else because they're more concerned about what they think and keeping other people happy rather than satisfying their own quality world pictures. They're just or their own perception of things. It's more important what other people think. They're overly concerned, can be overly concerned at times with what other people think.
Right. And in helping the clinicians to go through all of this information, are they encouraged to model what they are teaching?
Yes, that can be easier to say than do, but yes, very, very true.
And you're talking about that the early stages, which maybe they're getting some new information, they may be more eager, and that's where you can help with the connecting relationships. And maybe even help the family to see how those connecting relationships would be effective.
Yes. And when you do this really well and you put together an interpretive summary, if you want to see an example, I've got a mock one that I've put together. If you'd like to see it, it makes writing a treatment plans a lot easier, because that just, when I got in graduate school, the most difficult thing for me as a clinician was learning to write treatment plans. It was barely touched in graduate school. I had to have a supervisor sit down with me and show me how to write a measurable objective. And so I spent a lot of my first year as clinician learning to do treatment planning. And that's why I guess it's become such an important part of my supervision. I ended up writing a book about it. It's because it was such a missing piece. And the way that was done was just, I thought, absurd the way treatment planning was done. The way I was being trained to do it is we took the diagnosis of the client. We look up in these planners that had pre-written goals and objectives that at best remotely reflected what we were actually doing in treatment. And because how I was doing the goal setting and the treatment planning was based on choice theory. I was asking about quality world pictures related to the needs and having the client directed. It made so much more sense to me to do it that way. And I thought I want to write a book about how to do this. And I was telling the supervisor, I want the diagnosis is helpful, yet I believe it's being overemphasized as far as treatment. I want to develop a way of doing treatment planning that's based on the client's core world pictures and basic needs, not so much their diagnosis. And that supervisor told me, you can't do that. That's not the way it's done. And I said, but it works, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a book. And she said, well, I'm not going to buy your book if you do. And I years later, I finally got it done. And that former clinical supervisor stopped by my office one day, and I gave her a copy of the book. She was going to pay me for it. And I said, no, you. But a lot had changed over time, because now what's in vogue is what's called person-centered recovery planning. And what's person-centered recovery planning about? It's shifted from the traditional medical model to now being more person-focused, more person-directed, and it being led by the client and focusing on their needs, not the diagnosis.
Right.
And then with choice theory, it was just perfect, because how they typically use needs is kind of general, but we got very specific needs. And they talk about in person-centered recovery planning, the goals need to be in the client's own words. And so with choice theory and reality therapy, how can you help them write words that put it in their own words, but it also be something that you could put in a treatment plan? And because sometimes one of the criticisms of person-centered recovery planning is, well, what if clients do not know what they want, or they say something that's just bizarre? Like we had one lady say she wanted in her treatment plan that she wanted to take care of the case manager. Obviously, there was probably some transference going on there with the case manager, but you couldn't put that in a treatment plan because insurance companies going to laugh at you. But if you know choice theory, that's what she says that she wants, but what does she really want? So using choice theory as your guide, you could ask, well, why is it important for you to take care of the case manager? And she said, well, it helps me feel important. It gives me a sense of meaning and purpose. I like helping other people. Well, she just mentioned love and belonging and power right there. There it is, right there. Mm-hmm.
There it is. There it is. There it is. And your passion is just radiating through the airways of how you really want to help the people see who they are and who they can become as to their legitimacy.
And I tell you what, doing supervision, one of the biggest complaints I would get is people just hated doing treatment planning, because it's not any fun going through a book, looking at a diagnosis and trying to take guesses as to what goals and objectives are going to fit with what you hope will work in therapy. It's a whole lot more fun to do treatment planning this way.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we're running short on our time, so we're going to close out for today, but we will talk afterward, and you can come back and read some of those to us or explain it to us.
Yeah. Well, I'll be backing. I'll be presenting on the topic of case conceptualization and treatment planning on the upcoming virtual conference in April.
Okay, sounds good. We'll mark that down. be sure to attend. But like I say, this program is for the public at large. And we like to have it in small bites. So I'd like you to do 2 or 3 more small bites and reading some of your treatment plans or sharing them in more detail. So thank you for
Sure.
being here, and all of you that are here, and we'll chat live here as soon as I stop the recording. And may you have good mental health and many blessings.
Okay. Everyone have a great week.
Hold on, Mike. Don't go away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hold on.